Bruce again. We're back for the second installment of my video tutorials. This will be the same car that we worked on last session, the microcar, but this time we're going to put it into a front angled view. This is going to be a different challenge than the first one because of the fact that we're going to be doing it in two-point perspective, whereas the first one was a one-point perspective, which is a great deal more simple. So we'll be working around the form a little bit more in this drawing, and that provides some new challenges that you'll see in the upcoming video. Enjoy! I've called it a front three-quarter view. It may not be quite that, but it's basically an angled view of the car from the front. Because of the fact that we'll be dealing with a two-point perspective today, I'm going to show you a couple of things that will help to make some distinctions. You've got to be able, if you want to be able to draw accurately, you've got to be able to calculate distance and perspective. I'm just going to show you a quick little trick here. Now, this box that I've just built is presumably going to be a wheel. So I'm just going to run an X through here, and that will give me the 4 points of my ellipse. That's a little off there, so let's fix that. Okay, so there we are. And now I'm going to draw my ellipse in. So that would be wheel number 1. Now, remember what I said in the last video, that usually you've got a couple, 2.5, 3, depending on the car, wheels between the front and the rear wheel. Well, we need to do that, but it would be nice if we could calculate it reasonably accurately. And the way we do this, we take this middle line to the vanishing point, and you'll notice it's not perfect, but it's thereabouts. Then draw a line from here through here, and wherever it touches this top line, that's going to be one more square, exactly the same as that in perspective. You can also do it this way, draw from here, here, and it should end up there. So, same thing again, from here through here, and wherever it touches that line up here, that's your second square. Here through here, and wherever that touches that line, that's 3. Now let's imagine that I wanted to do a wheel separation of 2.5. That would be easy enough. All I would have to do is this. There's my half. That means that that wheel starts there, and again, if I draw from here through here, this will give me the half measure I need to get my second wheel. Now 2.5 is a little close, but that's okay. I'm just doing this to show you. Now this is a great trick. It works both this way if you wanted to calculate up. It works exactly the same way. Halfway line. Draw from here through here, wherever it touches this line, that's your next, and that goes to the vanishing point. So you can build an awful lot out of that. So that's a perspective trick. You will find that in the Scott Robertson book that I referenced at the end of the last video. The next thing I'm going to mention is that some of you, when you start drawing cars, you may want to base them in a box. So you may want to set a box up, and this box will essentially be the exterior of your car. You'll notice that this is an unusually shaped box for a car, but that's because I'm working on this this little micro car. So you'd go about it, and this box would help you to keep in mind as you're drawing where the actual car is and how the car sits with reference to the box. The simple fact of the matter is a box is much easier to draw than a vehicle. So if you can start with a fairly accurate box and basically use perspective just to cut away at this until you get the shape you want out of the car, That's a good way to work. It's tricky and it takes time to get used to. But what you're doing here essentially is it's almost as if you've got a cube of soap or soft foam and you're carving away from it to get at the actual form underneath. I'm going to just start working on the car as it is. I've been doing this for quite a long time, and I don't really feel like I need the box anymore. Now you'll notice that as I've drawn in my rear wheel, you'll notice that this one is more or less upright, but this one's on more of a slant. The reason for that is, again, I'm trying to give the vehicle a little bit of extra drama. It probably wouldn't be slanted quite like that. Probably a little bit too dramatic, but that's okay. A ground line, shadow rather. Okay. Now, I've drawn this line in here. This is a bit of a cheat. What this is this is the front wheel, this is the offside front wheel. It wouldn't actually look like this. You'd never see the front side wheel sticking out from beyond the car the way I've drawn it there. It's just a little bit of a trick we use to give the wheel a little bit, give the front of the car a little bit more separation from the rest of the background. Otherwise it might look like it's leaning over a bit. Don't like that. Bit of a mistake again, but that's why I'm drawing lightly. So this is the roof of the car. That's the back, and I'm just going to draw on the windshield and the windscreen. And of course the side windows. Now, while I'm doing all of this, I am referencing one of the drawings I did of this car earlier. You'll see I've done a little test of this guy up here. It's very different from what I'm drawing now. Slightly different angle. But it's nice to have done this stuff at least once before you actually get into it, so that you've got an idea of what you're drawing. What I've drawn there is not quite a thumbnail. As you can see, that's probably about, what, 3 inches long. A thumbnail might even be a little bit smaller than that. But it's a good way, to, as I say, to get an idea for what it is that you are drawing. I've given, again, a little bit of a ledge here to suggest that this is wrapping around the body somewhat. If you'll remember, I did a little cut out here, and I'm going to drop that in like that. Now, I can't remember if I actually dropped in my sketch here, this slightly older one, I actually dropped the windshield, or the side screen here, and I think I'll do that here. I'm not sure if that's actually the case, but it's okay. It's not going to make a big difference one way or the other. And I'll just put in the suggestion of a mirror on the other side here. Okay, once again, because of the perspective, and it's just a bit damp, so I'm going to put something under that. Because of the perspective, you're going to see more of the front of this tire than you would the back. This is similar to what we were dealing with in the 2-point perspective, or sorry, the 1-point perspective in the earlier drawing. you'll see more of this side of the wheel than the other because of the angle we're looking at it from. And the rule that we did with the 5-pointed wheel, the same will apply to this, even though this isn't a circle. You just have to do that 5-pointed wheel within an ellipse instead of the circle. And I'll show you how. That's going to be my top point, just to offset it a little bit. And I'm doing this fairly casually. If I was really concerned about this drawing, I would make sure that it was accurate by calculating it out, as we discussed in the past video. But I'm not that concerned about it here. I think it's pretty good if it just works out reasonably well. So now you'll notice you see a little bit more of this interior ellipse on this wheel than this one. It's because that one's further back. And I'll do the same thing here. Okay, so again, join, 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 join. And this one, it's so, I mean, you'll only be able to see the two, so I'm not too worried about that. And now I can just put my details in. So I'm going to shut up for a bit and just draw. And if I think of anything that's important, I'll bring it up. Now you'll notice I'm going to put a couple of little headlamps here in the front. You'll notice that I've made this one on the left hand side a lot narrower. That's because this surface is rolling a bit, so you see more of this one than this one. This one will be somewhat in a different angle. And then I've got my headlamps up here too. And the same thing will happen. You'll get much narrower on that side and much wider on this side. It's a good thing when you're doing headlamps to treat, remember that headlamps essentially are a reflection. It's just a sort of, it's not chrome, but it's light chrome. And so it's a strong reflective surface, and that gives you usually a pretty distinct graphic like I've just drawn there. Usually shadowed out towards the back, and usually with a reflection coming down in the middle there. Got to be careful that you don't make your car end up looking like a too much like a face. It's very easy. It's called anthropomorphizing, and it's very easy to do, to end up drawing a face into your car. There are some cars that have faces. The Austin Healey Sprite comes to mind. You should look that one up. It's the one they call the bug eye, or if you're British, the frog eye Sprite. And it's a neat little car. I'm just going to, you'll notice that this line went like this. I'm just bending that around to suggest that there's a surface underneath that. Again, I can't remember which side I put my the door handle. If this were something I was more serious about, that I was going to be showing somebody or presenting to somebody, obviously I'd check that. It's very important you get these details consistent. Not so important in this because, I mean, I'm just doing this to give you guys an idea of how to construct drawings and rendering them. So if there's a bit of a differentiation between the two drawings, it's not necessarily a bad thing. I'm just putting another line down here. This line is going to be, again, another sort of detail line. It's going to be a shadow. You can imagine you've got things reflecting in this car from all around, and cars are generally, they have very reflective surfaces. So you're going to see stuff reflected in there. That being the case, I've got to come up with some graphics. So I've already done my little bull's horn one here. Notice that because this car has a soft corner here, I've rolled that around. I haven't stopped it here, I've just rolled it around because you'd see a bit of that as it rolled. And then you've got this one here, and I'm keeping that just a little bit off the edge because I don't want it to blot out that edge again, as we discussed in the last video. You'd always get that little highlight. I am going to see possibly just a little bit of this over here. I'm going to suggest the mirror in there, and I want to know where the inside of my car, where stuff is. So you would see this little area here. I'm going to imagine that you would probably have a seat in here somewhere. I'm not going to take too much time being extra creative with the seat that I design. I'm just going to make it kind of upright, and you'll see the same thing. Now I'm going to want to widen that a bit so that it does look a little bit more realistic. So I'm not going to see that everywhere, but you will, I mean, you won't see it here because there's a reflection here. You won't see it here because there's the reflection there. But anywhere there's not a reflection, you will be seeing that those little details inside. And I'm just giving you a little steering wheel and IP there too. So where I'm drawing this in darker is where you will actually be seeing it. Notice again that when I do corners, I'm softening them up just a little bit. I don't want any of these corners to be really too harsh. I need them to have little rolls to them because that's the nature of manufactured items. Very few things, especially manufactured things, have really sharp 90-degree angles. They do tend to bend around corners. So it's something that you should keep in mind when you're drawing, that you've got to kind of know how it's being manufactured. And if you know the manufacturing, you get an idea, you get a sense of what things are going to look like when they've been made. You would see some of the back window. I'm just pulling it. That may be a bit low, but that's okay. So it is important to have an idea of what's going on inside the car. I'm just sort of making this up as I go along, giving it the feeling that it is resolved in there, I hope. And you want to do that because it does give that, you're not really looking for an illusion of reality here, but you are looking for the sense that this is a real manufactured item. And it helps if you do think through those thoughts, like the ones that comprise the interior. Alright, so once again, I'm just going to append my name to it down here. And I think it's fairly successful. It is, just the way I've ended up drawing it, it is quite a bit different actually now that I look at it from the car that I was thinking of earlier. I think I've made probably the door too shallow and the window too high. So in the first drawing I was trying to keep everything, if you remember, I was trying to make the window a little bit higher up. This one, as you can see, it's ended up taking up a large amount of the car, perhaps a little bit too much. I think probably what I did was I got carried away when I started doing the windshield here, and I probably should have carried it up just a little bit more. It's not that big a deal. It is a sketch, and at least if you do this, you get the idea of, well, do I like it like this, or do I prefer it the way I did it the other iteration that I just finished? So it's not a big deal if you do make little mistakes like this, because it does help you to make decisions later on. Just be aware that you have made those changes so that you don't end up with a whole bunch of different looking vehicles from when you're trying to describe one car. Once again, should you want any further information on perspective and drawing, you can take a look at the end slide. It is the same thing as last week because we've covered mostly the same sort of subject matter. The difference is, and the challenge that was a little bit different on this one, is the fact that this is a 2-point perspective as opposed to a 1-point, meaning that you've got your vanishing points going off to 2 different areas instead of just one. If you remember this guy, we had the vanishing point right here. As you can see, this is very different than that. Anyway, I do hope you've enjoyed the video. If you did, please feel free to subscribe and like it if you did. I look forward to seeing you guys next time.